Welcome back. President Trump took the fifth in a deposition with the New York Attorney General's office over a civil investigation into his businesses. Despite his complaints about an FBI raid on his post-presidential office and home at Mar-a-Lago, he's reportedly happy with the newfound publicity. It doesn't hurt that even Trump-skeptical Republicans say he's getting a raw deal. And now, 48 hours since the raid, even Trump haters say Attorney General Merrick Garland needs to speak. Evidently, the soundbite didn't raid. There is near universal agreement that Garland should justify the unprecedented raid.
There has to be something more than just a Presidential Records Act violation.
There's more to this than meets the eye, and I have to think that there's something a lot more serious that they think is being withheld from the presidential collection.
If it's only about records retention, it's a problem, for sure.
If you're going to go in and execute a search warrant on a former president's residence and business, there better be a big there.
The question of whether or not there's more going on here is a real one, because it was a very substantial, extraordinary step.
Well, first off, there actually doesn't have to be more. It's conventional wisdom that there is more. So far, there is no proof of any type that there is anything more, and Garland actually doesn't have to say anything. He literally is the one man in Washington who isn't talking about the Trump raid and the only one who knows everything about the Trump raid. Kelly Meyer in Washington with the increasing pressure Garland faces. Hi, Kelly.
Hey, Leland. Well, Garland is facing immense pressure from both sides, and now the DOJ is being ordered to respond to two groups looking for answers by the judge who signed off on the Mar-a-Lago search in the first place. The conservative advocacy group Judicial Watch and an Albany-based news outlet, the Times-Union, are asking the courts to unseal the FBI search warrant used to search the former president's Florida home. The judge gave the DOJ till Monday night to respond to these requests, and this all as the pressure grows for the DOJ and the FBI to break their silence.
Americans want to see some transparency, and that's why FBI Director Wray and Attorney General Garland need to get in front of America today.
What we need to hear is a response from DOJ and the FBI.
The White House continues to say that this is separate from politics and just a criminal investigation. And another thing here, it is unclear whether the Trump camp has a copy of the search warrant and could release it themselves. It is customary for authorities to hand over a copy of the search warrant, but today the former president's son said FBI agents refused to do so. Leland?
Yeah, and even the search warrant itself wouldn't necessarily have the affidavits that give the probable cause and the like from the FBI agents and the U.S. Attorney. Kelly Meyer, thank you very much. With that, we bring in noted opinion columnist for the Washington Post, author of The Destructionist, the 25-year crack-up of the Republican Party, Dana Milbank. Dana, crack-up of the Republican Party. I haven't seen the Republican Party this united since, I don't know, maybe the Iraq War?
Yeah, that's right. The crack-up was not about in an electoral sense. It was in the, I went back 25 years in the book to Newt Gingrich and talked about how gradually in various iterations over time sort of lost touch with the truth, increasingly brought white nationalists into the party, and was increasingly flirting with violence and authoritarian tendencies. And unfortunately, we're in one of those moments now where you hear a lot of people on the Republican side and from the Fox News side using a lot of violent rhetoric in this situation about the searches.
It's interesting. You also hear the left sort of gleefully proclaiming that this is going to be the end of Trump, right? That all of a sudden now they have him in their crosshairs. I'm thinking about, though, the Democrats thought they would take down Trump with Russian collusion, the Steele dossier, abuse of power and obstruction of Congress, impeachment number 1, impeachment number 2, incitement or insurrection. Should people be a little more resonant in their sort of glee on this?
Yeah, I'm certainly not gleeful about it. I mean, many people have said this is the end of Trump going back to 2015. I believe it's been every week, if not every month. It's never actually turned out to be true. Now, there's a couple of different legal actions going on here, and neither you nor I nor any of your viewers tonight really know what's going on in either of them. By definition, we really can't know what's going on. So I don't think people on the left should be gleeful, and I certainly don't think people on the right should be talking about war and assassination and attacks.
No one should ever talk about assassination. But if you want to talk about sort of the relative issues involving rhetoric, which are important, I agree with you, words matter. You think about calling out both sides on this. The New York Attorney General, the one bringing the case against President Trump in a civil matter, here's a video of some of the things she said about President Trump from the campaign trail. Take a listen.
Will you sue him for us?
Oh, we're going to definitely sue him. We're going to be a real pain in the ass.
I will never be afraid to challenge this illegitimate president.
We need to focus on Donald Trump. We need to follow his money. What is fueling my soul right now is Trump.
This illegitimate president. I look forward to going into the office of Attorney General every day, suing him, and then going home.
Okay, that helps things and shows impartiality. How?
Well, look, I think you're drawing a false parallel here. Republicans have been saying words like, no one is safe, you're next, they're coming for you, war, attack, destroy the FBI. The Justice Department is corrupt. These are the sorts of things that drive people to violence. You can play clips of Democratic politicians saying partisan things in elections and Republican politicians saying partisan things in elections. That's fair game. That's what happens in politics. When you incite people to violence, you're in a fundamentally different area.
I'm unclear, though, when you say incite people to violence, you're saying they're coming for you next. We've seen the FBI, though, go after people for political reasons. We saw the IRS go after people for political reasons. Why wouldn't any reasonable conservative think, gee, I might be next?
When you make the government of the enemy, when you use words like war and attack, and you are under attack and they are coming for you, it is designed to play on people's fears. It is designed to make them frightened. Now, you may hear that, I may hear that. That doesn't mean we're going to flip out. A lot of people are very close to the edge in this country. We've seen a dramatic rise in violence, particularly from right-wing extremists.
Dana, that's just not true. The latest political or partisan attacks have actually been by left-wing groups. I'm thinking about the attack on the crisis pregnancy centers. I'm thinking about attacks on churches.
Leland, you're very interesting, but it's actually 70% of the attacks, when they're tabulated, are from right-wing groups. Last year, 28 of the 30 deaths that were caused by political violence were from
tabulated by who?
Leland, is this Fox News?
No, it's not actually. It's not. There's a reason I'm not there anymore.
They already have Fox News, so if you at NewsNation want to be Fox News too, you can have at it.
No, I think this is a legitimate question, though, and I'm wondering why it's so difficult for people on the left to understand why those on the right might feel under siege by the FBI and by the IRS.
Well, you should, if you keep telling your viewers they are under siege,
I haven't said that.
They are under attack by their own government, that they should feel that they're under siege and under attack. You, sir, are inspiring violence in people. You will have blood on your hands.
I haven't said that. I've said people feel that way, and I'm wondering if after Lois Lerner and after Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and after others, why people don't have a legitimate right to feel as though...
You, sir, are telling them that it is legitimate for them to feel that they are being attacked by their own government.
I'm asking, why don't you feel it's legitimate?
You have said that. This is violent rhetoric. You're speaking recklessly.
I am?
You are.
When it gets unreasonable, it's difficult to continue. Mr. Milbank, it's good to be with you. Obviously, we read your piece in the Post, and we'll continue to do so. Thank you. Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to subscribe. Click the red button to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.